The Saurian commander's skull crunched sickeningly as Lieutenant Michael Porter smashed his armored fist into the alien's face, green ichorous blood splattering the human's knuckles. Porter had warned the Saurians humanity would not bow down. Humans explored the stars for a century, cautiously colonizing planets, wary of hostile aliens like the reptilian Saurians. The Saurian Empire declared war and struck first blood, assaulting the defenseless human mining colony on Kepler 100XX-F. Porter, an Earth Defense Fleet fighter ace, heard the colony's desperate distress call. Disobeying orders, he engaged the attacking Saurian ship solo. His laser cannons flashed, vaporizing 3 Saurian fighters instantly. Murloc, the notorious Saurian commander, fled like a coward. The colonists were saved, for now, but Porter's heroic actions marked him for death by the vindictive Saurians. Porter would be court-martialed by Earth's timid leadership for his brazen intervention. The Saurian-human war had begun, the fate of humanity's galactic colonies in peril. To survive, mankind needed to shed its timidity and fight back ferociously, like Porter. Like cornered rats, humans had to come out swinging and make the arrogant alien invaders regret their aggression. The court-martial was a joke. They wanted to punish me for defending our people, for having the balls to stand up to the Saurians, but in the end, they had no choice. They needed me out there, fighting on the front lines. My new orders came through shortly after the trial. I was being sent to Zaxa Prime, deep in Saurian territory. Intel suggested the lizards were cooking up some new weapon, something capable of wiping out entire worlds. My job was to get in, find out what I could, and wreck the place if possible. I knew I was being sent on a suicide mission. The top brass wanted me out of the way one way or another, but if I could put a dent in the Saurians' plans, it would be worth it. Zaxa Prime was a backwater, a primitive world that had never known war until the Saurians arrived. The locals, the Zaxorians, were a peaceful bunch. They didn't stand a chance against the Saurians' advanced tech and ruthless tactics. Now they were little more than slaves, forced to work in the Saurians' mines and factories. I made contact with a young Zaxorian named Thalon. He was barely more than a kid, but he had fire in his eyes. He wanted to fight back against the Saurians, to free his people. I told him I could help, but I needed his assistance first. Thalon agreed to help me infiltrate the Saurian base. He knew the layout, the guard rotations, the weak points in their security. We made our way inside, sneaking past patrols and security systems. But then we ran into Murloc. The bastard recognized me from our last encounter. He snarled, his reptilian eyes gleaming with hatred. "You'll pay for what you did to me, human," he hissed, drawing his blaster. I didn't waste time with words. I charged forward, dodging his shots and slamming my fist into his scaly face. We traded blows, grappling and punching, biting and clawing. I could feel my wounds reopening, blood soaking through my uniform. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. Too much was at stake. Finally, I got the upper hand. I grabbed Murloc's head and twisted, hearing the satisfying crunch of his neck snapping. He went limp, his body falling to the floor. I staggered back, my vision blurring. I was losing blood fast. Thalon grabbed me, supporting my weight. "We have to go," he urged. "More guards will be coming." We made it out of the base, barely. Thalon half-carried, half-dragged me to safety. As I lay there, trying to staunch the bleeding from my wounds, he told me what he had learned about the Saurians' new weapon. They called it the Star Crusher. It was a massive energy cannon, capable of harnessing the power of a star and focusing it into a devastating beam. With it, the Saurians could destroy entire planets, wiping out billions of lives in an instant. I knew then that I had to stop them. The Star Crusher was an existential threat to humanity, to every species in the galaxy. I had to find a way to destroy it, no matter the cost. But first I had to heal. I had to gather my strength, because the fight against the Saurians was far from over. It was only just beginning. The debriefing room was silent as I finished my report on the Star Crusher. The Earth Defense Council members stared at me, their expressions ranging from disbelief to outright horror. Admiral Jameson was the first to speak. "If what you're saying is true, Lieutenant Porter, then we're facing an existential threat. The Saurians could wipe out entire planets with this weapon." "That's exactly why we need to act now," I said, leaning forward in my seat. "We can't afford to sit back and wait for them to use it. We have to take out the Star Crusher before it's too late." "And risk starting an all-out war with the Saurians?" Ambassador Nakamura asked, shaking her head. "We should try to negotiate, find a diplomatic solution." I slammed my fist on the table, making everyone jump. There is no diplomatic solution with the Saurians. They're ruthless, bloodthirsty monsters who won't stop until they've conquered or destroyed every other species in the galaxy. We have to hit them hard and fast, before they have a chance to use the Star Crusher. The room erupted into argument, with council members shouting over each other. Finally, Admiral Jameson called for order. "Enough! We've heard Lieutenant Porter's report and recommendations. Now we need to make a decision." The vote was close, but in the end, the Council agreed to authorize a massive assault on Zaxor Prime. I was to lead the charge, with the full might of the Earth Defense Fleet at my back. As we approached Zaxor Prime, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The planet was too quiet, with no sign of the Saurian fleet, and then they appeared, a massive armada of ships led by a new commander, Krotox. I had heard of Krotox. He was a ruthless tactician, known for his cunning and brutality. He had been tasked with defending the Star Crusher at all costs, and I knew he would stop at nothing to achieve his goal. The battle was fierce and bloody, with both sides taking heavy casualties. My ship was hit by enemy fire, alarms blaring as systems failed one by one. I knew I had to eject, but I hated the thought of leaving my crew behind. I hit the eject button and was launched into space, my pod hurtling towards the surface of Zaxor Prime. I braced for impact, gritting my teeth as the pod slammed into the ground. I crawled out of the wreckage, my body aching from the impact. I looked around trying to get my bearings, and then I saw a familiar face. "Thalen," I called out, stumbling towards the young Zaxorian. "What are you doing here?" "We've been fighting the Saurians," Thalen said, grinning. "Ever since you left, we've been hitting their supply lines, sabotaging their equipment. We're ready to take the fight to them." I nodded, a plan already forming in my mind. "Then let's do it. We'll infiltrate the base and destroy the Star Crusher from within. It's the only way to stop them." Thalen gathered the rest of the Zaxorian resistance fighters, and together we began to plan our assault. It would be risky, but we had no choice. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and we were the only ones who could stop the Saurians and their terrible weapon. The ground trembled as our small strike team breached the outer defenses of the Saurian base. Thalen and I led the charge, a ragtag group of human and Zaxorian fighters, united in our determination to bring down the Star Crusher. Blaster fire filled the air, the acrid smell of burning metal and flesh stinging my nostrils. "Take cover," I shouted, diving behind a shattered wall as a barrage of laser bolts whizzed past my head. Thalen crouched beside me, his scales glistening with sweat. "We have to keep pushing forward," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos around us. "The Star Crusher is our only target." I nodded, checking the charge on my pulse rifle. "Let's move." We fought our way deeper into the base, cutting down Saurian soldiers and battle droids with relentless determination. The corridors were a maze of twisted metal and flickering lights, the walls scarred by the signs of heavy combat. As we turned a corner, I froze in my tracks. Before us lay a scene of unimaginable horror. Rows of glass tanks lined the walls, each one containing the broken, mutilated bodies of humans and Zaxorians. Some were still alive, their eyes wide with terror and pain. "What the hell is this?" I whispered, my stomach churning with revulsion. Thalen's face was grim. "Experiments. The Saurians are trying to create a new biological weapon." Rage boiled up inside me, white-hot and all-consuming. "We have to stop this. We have to put an end to their cruelty." Just then, the base shook with the force of an orbital bombardment. Dust rained down from the ceiling, the lights flickering and sparking. The fleet must be taking heavy fire, I said, my mind racing. Krotox is targeting our position. He's willing to sacrifice his own soldiers to take us out, Thalen said, his eyes hard. We have to move fast. We pushed on, fighting our way through the last lines of defense. The Star Crusher loomed before us, a monstrous construction of metal and pulsing energy. And there, standing before it, was Murloc. But he was not the same as before. His body was a twisted amalgamation of flesh and metal, his eyes glowing with a sickly green light. "You should not have come here, human," he snarled, his voice a grating electronic rasp. "The Star Crusher will be your doom." I raised my rifle, my finger tightening on the trigger. Not if I have anything to say about it. We clashed in a brutal hand-to-hand battle, trading blows with savage ferocity. Murloc was stronger, faster, his cybernetic enhancements giving him an edge. But I fought with the desperate strength of a man with nothing left to lose. In the end, I emerged victorious, but at a cost. Blood poured from a deep gash in my side, my vision blurring with pain and exhaustion. But I couldn't stop now, not when we were so close. With trembling hands, I planted the explosive charges on the Star Crusher's main reactor. Thalon helped me to my feet, his face a mask of concern. "We have to go," he urged, supporting my weight as we stumbled towards the exit. I took one last look at the Star Crusher, my finger hovering over the detonator. "For Earth," I whispered, "for the Zaxorians, for everyone the Saurians have ever hurt." And then I pressed the button, and the world erupted in fire and light. The explosion rocked the Saurian base to its core, a massive fireball erupting from the heart of the facility. In orbit, the Earth Defense Fleet pressed their advantage, hammering the Saurian ships with a relentless barrage of laser fire and missiles. "Keep up the pressure," Admiral Jameson barked over the comm. "Don't let them regroup." The Saurian ships broke formation, scattering like leaves in a hurricane. Some tried to fight back, but they were outmatched and outgunned. One by one, they fell, until the skies over Zaxor Prime were clear. On the ground, the Zaxorians emerged from their hiding places, blinking in the sudden sunlight. They looked around, hardly daring to believe that the nightmare was over. Thalon ran to the smoking ruins of the base, his heart pounding in his chest. He picked his way through the rubble, calling out Porter's name. "Michael, Michael, where are you?" A weak groan caught his attention. Thalon scrambled over a pile of twisted metal, his eyes widening at the sight before him. Porter lay in a pool of his own blood, his face pale and drawn. His armor was shattered, his body broken, but his eyes were still open, still filled with that same fierce determination. "We did it," Porter whispered, his voice barely audible over the crackling of the flames. "The Star Crusher is destroyed. Zaxor Prime is free." Thalon knelt beside him, tears streaming down his face. "You did it, Michael. You saved us all." Porter managed a weak smile. "Not just me. We all did it. Together." His eyes fluttered closed, his chest rising and falling one last time. Thalon bowed his head, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. The Earth Defense Fleet held a somber funeral for Michael Porter, the hero who had given his life to save humanity and the Zaxorians. They buried him on Zaxor Prime, in a quiet glade overlooking the rolling hills. Admiral Jameson spoke of Porter's bravery, his unwavering commitment to justice and freedom. Thalon stood beside him, his eyes red-rimmed, but his head held high. "Michael Porter was more than just a soldier," Thalon said, his voice ringing out over the assembled crowd. "He was a friend, a brother, a champion of the oppressed. He fought not just for his own people, but for all those who could not fight for themselves. Let us honor his memory by continuing his fight, by standing up to tyranny and oppression wherever we find it." The crowd roared their approval, their voices rising in a chorus of defiance and hope. But even as they celebrated their victory, a new threat was gathering on the horizon. The Saurian Empire, enraged by their defeat, launched a massive counterattack against human colonies and outposts. The Earth Defense Council, faced with the prospect of a never-ending war, made a fateful decision. They authorized the use of a devastating new weapon, the Nova bomb, capable of destroying entire star systems. The bomb was launched at the heart of the Saurian Empire, a blinding flash of light that consumed their homeworld and several key military installations. The Saurians, their empire in ruins and their military crippled, were forced to surrender. But the victory was a hollow one. Billions of innocent lives had been lost in the blast, and the use of such a terrible weapon weighed heavily on the conscience of humanity. The war with the Saurians had left deep scars on the galactic community, and the actions of the Earth Defense Council would have far-reaching consequences for generations to come. But through it all, the legacy of Michael Porter endured. He had shown that even in the darkest of times, there was still hope, still the possibility of a better future. And as long as there were those willing to fight for that future, to stand up against the darkness, then his sacrifice would not have been in vain. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.